Hello again. I'm sure that I'm not the only person who watched with interest the stories about the remaking of the Disney classic Snow White as a live-action film. Peter Dinklage, whom many of us enjoyed watching in Game of Thrones, is reported to be annoyed at the depiction of dwarves in the film because he says that it is about dwarves living in a cave. Ridiculous. They actually live in a very neat and tidy cottage and simply go to work in a mine. This is a good example of seeking offence where none actually exists. The thing about this new film to which I do object, and at which I take offence, is something quite different. It is the casting of Snow White as a woman with brown skin. Why does this matter? It's a fairy tale, isn't it? Surely she could have white skin, brown skin or black skin. Does it really matter? It's quite simple. Snow White and the Dwarfs is a folk tale set down by the Brothers Grimm a little over 200 years ago. They did not make it up, though. Their folk and fairy tales were old myths and legends which Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm collected by talking to country folk. Recent analysis, and this is linguistic and etymological analysis, done rather in the way that DNA is traced. I ought to make an entirely separate video on this subject. But anyway, recent analysis shows that some of the stories that the Brothers Grimm collected, Beauty and the Beast, Jack and the Beanstalk, for example, are thousands of years old and were being told around the hearth in Europe during the Bronze Age. In other words, they are a very ancient part of European culture, our culture. The original stories were a lot darker and more bloodthirsty than the modern versions that we know as fairy tales. For example, in the original version, which I have in this book, the wicked queen who tried to do away with Snow White was not her stepmother, but her real mother, who was madly jealous of her daughter's youth and beauty, which gives a slightly different slant to the moral of the story. I have a great interest in folklore, and in fact I have a book on the subject which is due out this week, available from all good bookshops. Here's a fairly modern translation of the original Grimm's fairy tales. This one is a translation of the stories as they were originally first published in Germany in 1812. Let's have a look for a second at the story of Snow White. Okay. The queen said to herself, "If only I had a child as white as snow, as red as blood, and as black as the wood of the window frame." Soon thereafter she gave birth to a little daughter who was as white as snow, as red as blood, and her hair as black as ebony. That's why the child was called Little Snow White. You see, the fact that the girl's skin was as white as snow is important for this story. It has a symbolic meaning of purity and virginity, akin to the fact that brides' dresses are white. Her skin colour is an integral part of the folk tale with its own symbolism. Disney, of course, have deliberately given this role to Rachel Zegler, an actress with a brown skin. She may be seen in the thumbnail to this video. This is no trivial point. It really takes away the entire point of the story and makes the very title of the tale a nonsense. This is a story rooted in European traditions, and yet a modern filmmaker feels able to ignore the fact that this is part of the indigenous culture of an ethnic group and is able to distort it horribly without anybody seeing anything wrong in that. Here's a question. Would any filmmaker in the modern world feel able to treat any other ethnicity in this cavalier fashion. Let us suppose for a moment that Disney was making a live-action remake of their cartoon Pocahontas. Would they really use a blonde white actress for the title role? Does anybody think that likely? Of course not. Why? Because it would be culturally insensitive to have a white European playing the part of a Native American, and cultural sensitivity is a big thing these days. What about the Disney film Mulan? The heroine there would have to be genuinely Chinese in a live-action remake, right? Not a white person tricked out to look Chinese. And yet, here we are, with a folktale with roots thousands of years old in my own culture, a story inextricably and explicitly linked to my ethnicity and skin colour, a maiden whose skin is snow white, without any shadow of a doubt a European, and yet it's okay to ignore that and cast a person with brown skin in the role. What does this say about how my ethnicity is viewed? What does it say about attitudes to European culture and respect for the traditions of the indigenous population of Europe? It rather seems to be, as an ethnic European, that my own culture is in danger of being overwhelmed, and that in our enthusiasm to celebrate everybody else's heritage, that of white Europeans is in danger of being buried. I think that this is what they call cultural erasure.